She stood on the edge of the cliff, the wind whipping through her hair as she gazed out at the turbulent sea below. The sound of crashing waves echoed in her ears, a constant reminder of the chaos within her own heart. Tears welled up in her eyes as she thought about all she had lost, her dreams shattered, her hopes crushed. But in that moment, as she stared into the vast expanse of the ocean, something stirred deep within her. A feeling of defiance rose up, pushing aside the despair that threatened to consume her. With a fierce determination, she took a step back from the edge, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "I will not let this defeat me," she whispered to the roaring winds. "I will rise from the ashes, stronger than ever before." As if in response, a sudden burst of sunlight broke through the dark clouds overhead, illuminating the path before her. The warmth on her face felt like a caress from the heavens, a sign that she was not alone in her struggles. Taking a deep breath, she turned away from the cliff and began to walk back towards the world she had left behind. The journey ahead would be long and treacherous, but she was no longer afraid. She had found her inner strength, her resilience, her will to fight, and with each step she took, the ground beneath her feet felt solid, the air around her charged with a new energy. She knew that the road ahead would be full of twists and turns, but she was ready to face whatever challenges came her way. For she was a survivor, a warrior, a phoenix rising from the ashes of her past. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting hues of pink and orange across the sky, Emily's heart raced with anticipation. She clutched the letter in her trembling hands, the words within burning a hole in her soul. She had never expected such a revelation, such a betrayal. Her mind was a whirlwind of confusion and pain as she made her way to the meeting spot, a rundown cafe on the outskirts of town. The place held a certain nostalgia for her, a place where she and James had spent countless hours dreaming and scheming about their future together. But now, as she pushed open the creaky door and saw him sitting at their usual table, a wave of anger washed over her. How dare he keep this secret from her for so long? How could he have pretended to love her, all the while harboring such a monstrous lie? James looked up as she approached, his eyes filled with a mix of guilt and desperation. He reached out a trembling hand, his voice barely above a whisper. "Emily, please, let me explain." But she couldn't bear to hear his excuses. Not now. Not after everything that had been laid bare in that damning letter. Without a word, she turned on her heel and stormed out of the cafe, tears streaming down her cheeks. As she made her way through the darkened streets, the weight of the truth settled on her shoulders like a heavy burden. How could she trust anyone ever again? How could she move on from this betrayal, this shattering of her heart? But deep down, a tiny spark of defiance flickered to life within her. She wouldn't let this destroy her. She would rise from the ashes of this broken love, stronger and more determined than ever before. With a steely resolve, she wiped away her tears and set her jaw, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the deserted street, Sarah's heart raced with a mix of fear and exhilaration. She knew that crossing paths with the notorious gang of thieves was risky, but the treasure they were after was too tempting to resist. The old abandoned warehouse loomed ahead, its broken windows staring like empty eye sockets. Sarah tightened her grip on the lockpick in her hand, her hands shaking with nerves. She glanced back at Jack, her partner in crime, who flashed her a reassuring smile that did little to calm her racing thoughts. With a deep breath, Sarah approached the rusty door and began working on the lock. The sound of metal against metal echoed in the silent night, sending a chill down her spine. Click. The lock gave way, and with a push, the heavy door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit corridor leading into the unknown. Sarah and Jack exchanged a knowing look before stepping inside, their footsteps muffled by the dust-covered floor. As they ventured deeper into the warehouse, the air grew thicker, filled with the scent of stale cigarette smoke and damp concrete. Suddenly, a noise from above made them freeze in their tracks. Sarah's heart leaped into her throat as she saw the shadowy figures emerging from the darkness, blocking their only exit. "Looks like we have some uninvited guests." A raspy voice sneered from the shadows. Sarah's mind raced as she scanned the room for a way out, but the gang members had them surrounded. Adrenaline surged through her veins as she made a split-second decision, lunging towards the nearest window, crashing through the glass with a resounding shatter. She landed hard on the ground outside, shards of glass cutting into her skin, but the rush of freedom was worth the pain. Jack followed close behind, and together they sprinted into the night, the gang's furious shouts fading into the distance. As they ran through the empty streets, the adrenaline slowly ebbed away, leaving only the bitter taste of failure in Sarah's mouth. But as she looked at Jack, his eyes ablaze with excitement, she knew that this was just the beginning of their thrilling adventure. As the storm clouds gathered overhead, Sarah could feel her heart pounding in her chest. The winds whipped through the trees, sending a shiver down her spine. She knew she had to find shelter soon before the storm hit with full force. Just as she spotted a rundown cabin in the distance, a flash of lightning illuminated the darkening sky. With adrenaline coursing through her veins, she pushed herself to run faster. The rain began to fall in heavy sheets, drenching her to the bone. Reaching the cabin, Sarah threw open the creaking door and stumbled inside. The interior was musty and dimly lit, but it offered some protection from the raging storm outside. She collapsed onto a dusty cot, breathing heavily as she tried to calm her racing thoughts. As the thunder roared overhead, Sarah's mind drifted back to the events that had led her to this remote place. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the feeling of being utterly alone in the world. Tears mingled with the rain on her cheeks as she struggled to make sense of it all. In the flickering candlelight, a figure appeared in the doorway. Startled, Sarah sat up and squinted through the dimness. It was a man, tall and rugged, with piercing eyes that seemed to see straight through her defenses. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Sarah's voice quivered as she spoke, unsure of whether to trust this stranger in the middle of nowhere. The man's gaze softened, and he stepped closer, a small smile playing on his lips. "I could ask you the same thing. It's not safe out there in this storm. You're lucky you found this place when you did." Sarah felt a flicker of something unfamiliar stir in her chest. Was it hope? Relief? She couldn't be sure, but she found herself drawn to this stranger in a way she hadn't experienced in a long time. As the storm raged on outside, Sarah and the man sat in the dimly lit cabin, sharing stories and finding solace in each other's presence. In that moment, it felt like the universe had brought them together for a reason, and Sarah dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a glimmer of light at the end of the darkness that had consumed her for so long. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the small town, Rachel found herself standing on the edge of the cliff overlooking the ocean. The wind whipped through her hair, carrying with it the faint scent of salt water. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to silence the whirlwind of emotions raging inside her. She couldn't believe how quickly her life had spiraled out of control in just a few short weeks. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the loss, it all felt like a never-ending nightmare she couldn't wake up from. And now, standing on the edge of this cliff, she couldn't help but feel the pull of the void below, urging her to take that one final step. But just as she felt herself teetering on the brink, a voice cut through the chaos in her mind. It was a voice she hadn't heard in years, a voice that brought back memories long buried in the depths of her soul. It was his voice. "Rachel, wait!" he called out, his footsteps echoing against the rocks as he ran towards her. She turned to face him, her eyes filled with tears that she had been holding back for far too long. "Why did you come back?" she whispered, her voice barely above a hoarse whisper. He reached out for her, his touch sending a wave of warmth through her numb body. "Because I never stopped loving you," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "I made a mistake, Rachel, and I've been paying for it every single day since you left." She searched his eyes, looking for any hint of deceit or insincerity, but all she found was raw, unbridled honesty. In that moment, she felt something inside her shift, a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness that had consumed her whole being. "I don't know if I can trust you again," she admitted, her voice trembling with fear and uncertainty. "I understand," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. "But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust, Rachel. I'll spend the rest of my days trying to make things right if you'll just give me a chance." and as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in a fiery orange hue, Rachel made a decision. She took his outstretched hand, feeling the weight of the past slowly lifting off her shoulders. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for redemption and a new beginning after all. As the flames licked the night sky, Sarah's heart pounded with fear and determination. She clutched the old photograph in her hand, the only clue left by her mysterious benefactor. The inferno engulfed the abandoned warehouse where she was led to, the sound of crackling wood and roaring flames drowning out her racing thoughts. Pushing forward, Sarah made her way through the chaos, desperate to uncover the truth behind the cryptic message left by the stranger who promised answers about her past. The heat was suffocating, sweat beading on her brow as she navigated the maze of burning debris. Suddenly, a voice cut through the chaos, booming over the crackling flames. "Sarah, over here!" The voice was familiar, sending a shiver down her spine. She followed the sound until she saw a figure emerging from the smoke, their features obscured by the haze. As the figure drew closer, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. It was her estranged father, his eyes filled with a mixture of relief and regret. In that moment, a flood of emotions threatened to overwhelm her. Anger, betrayal, but also a flicker of longing for the connection she had lost so many years ago. "Sarah, I can explain." Her father's voice quivered with emotion as he reached out a hand towards her. Without hesitation, Sarah stepped forward, ready to confront the demons of her past. The flames raged around them, a fitting backdrop to the turbulent reunion unfolding before her. But just as she was about to grasp her father's outstretched hand, a deafening rumble filled the air, and the ground beneath them trembled violently. In a heartbeat, the warehouse began to crumble around them, sending debris raining down like deadly confetti. With a gut-wrenching scream, Sarah's world spun into chaos as she was separated from her father in the maelstrom of destruction. As she fell through the crumbling floor, darkness enveloped her, and a sense of impending doom gripped her heart. But amidst the chaos and uncertainty, one thing remained clear in Sarah's mind. She was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost, even if it meant facing the darkest corners of her past and the secrets that lay buried within. As the sun set behind the mountains, casting a fiery glow over the sprawling city below, Sarah found herself wandering the bustling streets aimlessly. Her heart felt heavy with the weight of the secrets she carried, the burden of betrayal threatening to consume her from the inside out. She had spent the entire day trying to ignore the nagging guilt gnawing at her conscience, but it was becoming increasingly impossible to ignore. The look in Mark's eyes when he had confronted her earlier that morning still haunted her, his words ringing in her ears like a constant reminder of the lie she had perpetuated. Sarah turned a corner and found herself standing at the edge of a bustling marketplace, the sounds of hawkers selling their wares and the aroma of spices filling the air. She felt a sudden urge to escape, to run away from the chaos and find solace in the quiet embrace of the mountains that loomed in the distance. Without hesitating, she began to walk, the rhythmic sound of her footsteps echoing in the empty alleyways as she made her way towards the outskirts of the city. The night sky had darkened to a deep indigo, sprinkled with a myriad of twinkling stars that seemed to guide her on her path. As she reached the edge of the city, Sarah could feel the weight on her shoulders beginning to lift, the cool night air clearing her mind and soothing her troubled soul. She found herself standing at the foot of the mountains, their majestic peaks reaching towards the heavens in silent reverence. With a deep breath, Sarah closed her eyes and allowed the silence to envelop her, the gentle whisper of the wind carrying away her fears and doubts. In that moment of stillness, she made a decision to confront the truth, to face the consequences of her actions head-on, no matter the cost. As she turned to make her way back to the city, a shooting star streaked across the sky, its fiery tail leaving a trail of light in its wake. Sarah took it as a sign that the universe was watching, that fate was guiding her towards her redemption. With newfound determination and a resolve as strong as the mountains themselves, Sarah set off towards the city, ready to face whatever lay ahead with courage and honesty in her heart. As Sarah lay in the hospital bed, Her hand clutched tightly in David's trembling grip. She felt a sense of calm wash over her. The doctor had just delivered the news that her cancer was in remission, and the weight that had been pressing down on her for months suddenly lifted. Tears welled up in David's eyes as he leaned in to kiss her forehead, whispering words of relief and gratitude. Sarah squeezed his hand, overwhelmed with emotion. It had been a long and grueling battle, but she had come out on the other side stronger and more determined than ever. As they sat in a comfortable silence, basking in the glow of the good news, a nurse entered the room with a bouquet of vibrant flowers. Sarah smiled as she accepted them, breathing in their sweet fragrance. It felt like a symbol of new beginnings, of life renewed. Despite the joy in her heart, Sarah couldn't shake the nagging feeling of unease that had been lingering in the back of her mind. She knew that not everyone got a second chance like she did, and she couldn't help but wonder why fate had been kind to her when so many others suffered. Lost in her thoughts, Sarah barely noticed when David's expression changed from one of happiness to one of concern. He gently took her hand and spoke softly. "Sarah, there's something I need to tell you." Her heart pounded in her chest as she looked into his eyes, searching for clues. She could sense the weight of his words before he even spoke them, and a cold chill ran down her spine. "During your treatment, the doctors found something else," David began, his voice shaky. "Something they think we need to address." Sarah's breath caught in her throat as her mind raced with fear and uncertainty. What could possibly be worse than cancer? David took a deep breath before revealing the truth, a truth that would change everything she thought she knew about herself and her life. "You're pregnant, Sarah," he said, his eyes filled with a mix of joy and apprehension. Her world spun as she tried to process the news. Pregnant? How was this possible? Amidst the chaos of emotions swirling inside her, a small spark of hope ignited, a beacon of light in the midst of darkness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the rolling hills, Emily stood at the edge of the cliff, her heart pounding in her chest. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. The moment of truth had arrived. With a trembling hand, she opened the letter she had been carrying with her for days. The words leaped off the page, shattering the fragile peace she had been holding on to. "I know the truth now," she whispered to the wind, tears streaming down her cheeks. The betrayal cut deep, slicing through her soul like a knife. But Emily was not one to wallow in self-pity. With a newfound determination, she wiped away her tears and made a decision. She would confront those who had wronged her, who had played with her heart like a toy. As she made her way down the winding path back to the village, the sky darkened, matching the turmoil in her heart. Every step was fueled by anger and hurt, propelling her forward with a fierce intensity. When she finally reached the familiar streets lined with quaint cottages, she wasted no time. She marched straight to the house of the one person she trusted the most, the one who had kept her darkest secret. But as she stood before the door, she hesitated. What if she was wrong? What if there was an explanation, a reason for the betrayal? Taking a deep breath, Emily pushed open the door and came face to face with the person she least expected to see. Their eyes met, and in that moment, everything became clear. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place, revealing a twisted web of deceit and lies that had been carefully constructed around her. Anger boiled inside her, but so did a sense of liberation. She was no longer a pawn in their game. With a steely gaze, Emily spoke, her voice firm and unwavering. "I know what you did," she said, each word dripping with venom, "and I will not stand for it any longer." The tension in the room was palpable, the air crackling with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. But Emily stood her ground, her resolve unbreakable. As the storm raged outside, matching the fury in her heart, Emily knew that this was only the beginning. The final chapter of this twisted tale had yet to be written, and she was determined to see it through to the end. As the final battle raged on, Sarah found herself face to face with the villain who had brought chaos and destruction to her world. The air crackled with magic as they clashed, their powers colliding in a dazzling display of light and energy. With every ounce of strength and determination, Sarah pushed back against her opponent, drawing on the courage and love that fueled her every action. She could feel the weight of the world on her shoulders, the hopes and dreams of so many resting on her ability to overcome this final challenge. The villain sneered, his eyes gleaming with malice as he launched a barrage of attacks at Sarah. But she stood her ground, her eyes blazing with ferocity and unstoppable resolve. With a shout that echoed through the battlefield, she unleashed a wave of power that shattered her enemy's defenses, sending him reeling. In that moment, Sarah knew that victory was within her grasp. She could see the fear in her opponent's eyes, the realization that his reign of terror was coming to an end. With a final surge of energy, she unleashed a devastating blow that knocked the villain to the ground, defeated and broken. As the dust settled and the echoes of battle faded away, Sarah stood victorious, her heart pounding with a heady mix of triumph and relief. The battle was won, the threat vanquished, and peace restored to her world once more. But as she looked out across the battlefield, at the friends and allies who had fought alongside her, Sarah knew that the true victory lay not in the defeat of her enemy, but in the bonds of loyalty and love that had carried them through the darkest of times. And so, as the sun set on the battlefield, casting a warm glow over the weary but triumphant warriors, Sarah knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, united in purpose and unwavering in their commitment to each other and the world they had fought so hard to protect.